Chris Lee and Blake Lovell here for, guess what, Blake?
What is this, the 8th time? 15th time? You people are getting your money's worth. I'll say that. If you subscribed to our channel and you thought we were not going to give you enough content, well, here you go. The SEC is giving us all the stuff we need. I'm just, again, I'm just laughing. Like, for one, I'm exhausted. For two, we've been talking about this Frank Martin, South Carolina thing for 2 months now, and I kept saying I thought it was going to be on Frank Martin's part, not necessarily South Carolina's part, that the split was going to happen. And I thought it would be either this offseason or next offseason. So it was really just a matter of, when was it going to happen more than anything. And, well, it's happened now. So that automatically opens up the door for someone else, perhaps someone named Dennis Gates. We'll see. I would have no bias there whatsoever. But can you
Well,
imagine?
let me stop you there. Your client, Dennis Gates, cannot
He's everywhere.
simultaneously coach all 14 SEC schools at once, even though you'd like him to. I understand. That just doesn't seem feasible. So who is feasible? The names that have been floated, Sean Miller, I think we rolled our eyes at that one. Mike Boynton makes sense because he played there. Dawn Staley's name has been brought up. Boynton is the one that's been public so far that makes the most sense, but I don't think South Carolina is a better job than Oklahoma State. No offense to our friends in Columbia, but Oklahoma State's won a lot more basketball games and done a lot more in the tournament than has Carolina.
Yeah, I don't think it's a better job. And again, no offense to our South Carolina faithful, but I don't. And I think that's the thing, right? And we were talking about this with Scott Drew in Florida and Mike Boynton at Oklahoma State and coming to South Carolina maybe. It's just, I think it's what do you perceive the Big 12 and the future of the Big 12, right?
Because that's a good point.
I mean, we know Texas and Oklahoma are leaving soon. And after that, who have they added? Who's been added to the Big 12?
Cincinnati and
BYU. Was BYU one of them?
This is how relevant the Big 12 is now.
Well, that's the problem, right? So, yeah, they're adding BYU, UCF, and Houston, and Cincinnati. Good teams, good programs, but financially, that's not replacing Texas and Oklahoma, right?
Yeah,
so,
those teams are not bringing quite the eyes to TV.
Yeah, so, I think that's the issue here. So, I think we have to keep that in mind, even for stuff that, oh, wow. Here's another coaching change. Well, this one is not. We're doing this. Look, this is not a live stream, but we are going to react to this one while we're doing. We're going to get back to South Carolina in a second, okay? But this is not as extreme of one, but it is exactly what I think someone asked us. Was it in the live stream yesterday on Sunday about Mike Schwartz at Tennessee? We said I think was that on our live stream? I'm pretty sure it was. Someone asked us the question, what do we think about Mike Schwartz? Rick Barnes is, right-hand guy after Rob Lanier left for Georgia State. Well, it turns out Mike Schwartz is heading to East Carolina to be their head coach. So Rick Barnes is losing his top assistant here, which is no surprise. I mean, he's lost Lanier and English, George Mason now. So good for him. All right, there's another one we'll get to talk about soon.
I sent you a text the other day. I said, can you just make it stop? Because we need time to breathe and digest. There's the tournament. We would usually be all over baseball. I have not spent a minute writing or broadcasting about baseball this week. That is this coaching carousel in a nutshell. It just will not stop.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There's another one. But that's an interesting one, though, because I like Schwartz. He's really good. Good defensive coach. That's good for East Carolina. Speaking of Carolina, let's get back to South Carolina. So there's one option that will not be on the table. I don't even remember what we were talking about.
Mike Boynton, whether Oklahoma State was a better job, the Big 12.
Right. That's right. That's what you have to think about. But I think as it stands, coaches are going to think about this. I think we'd be silly to not at least acknowledge that is something that will be thought about by coaches in the league. So Boynton makes sense because he played there, like you said. Beyond that, we have no idea, probably just like everyone else out there. So you mentioned Sean Miller, right? I
I don't
mean,
think Sean Miller's getting back into college hoops for South Carolina.
I just don't think that's the job that he's probably going to take, just to be honest with you.
Matt McMahon?
Matt McMahon, as we mentioned for all the others, I think that may be like one of those nice landing spots for Matt McMahon. And I know that's going to seem, and I mean, in comparison, right? I don't think Matt McMahon's getting the Florida job. Maybe I'm completely wrong. I don't think that's going to be the job he gets. Um, we talked about Missouri. Who else is open? I can't even keep up anymore. Georgia's filled.
Missouri's open. Mississippi State we think is going to be open.
Is that it right now?
LSU's open.
That's one. Good luck with that. I think this would be one if you're Matt McMahon. Like, there's not a lot of pressure. If you want to kind of, I don't want to say ease into it because I don't want to act like South Carolina doesn't want to win, right? I just think the pressure is not. I mean, it's nowhere near as high as some of these other positions. If we're ranking pressure of jobs, I think if we go with those four that are currently open, Florida has the most pressure. Missouri has the second most pressure. Mississippi State's going to have the third most pressure. I think South Carolina would be fourth in that category. In terms of pressure, even LSU, there will be more pressure on that job just because you really don't know what you're getting. So there's pressure no matter what stepping into that. So it's a job that's going to be less pressure. Not to say it's a bad job. I still think it's probably, it's probably one of the four bottom jobs in the league. I don't think that's really would surprise anyone if you really think about it and compare. But so, I mean, I think it will be going probably the mid-major up-and-coming coach type route. That to me seems like it would make sense. And like I said, if that's Matt McMahon, if that's Dennis Gates, if that's, I know Wes Miller had been tossed around because he was at Greensboro for a while. Sure. I mean, geographically you could make some sense out of that.
But leaving after a year, I think is
right, and that's what we. I mean, it's the same kind of thing we
that.
said with Kim English, right? And maybe end up being English because that's just a perfect fit. But and I'm looking. I mean, look, hey, we've talked about Bob Ritchie before, right? He's from South Carolina. Yeah. He's someone's had a lot of success at Furman. Everybody out there thinks he's going to move up eventually. And let's be honest. Like, he's in the NCAA tournament again this year if he doesn't get beat by a 30-something foot jumper with two guys in the face. So
3, but who's counting?
However many. I mean, it's just incredible. So that's another name I'd probably keep an eye on. I think he's an interesting one to think about if they go that route.
But I feel like, okay, Bob Ritchie, I feel like we had this with football. Like with Jamie Chadwell, when that football job was open, there was a portion of the booster base that looked down its nose at Jamie Chadwell and said, we're not going to hire a guy from Coastal. And would Furman not be viewed in the same light? In other words, it's an in-state school, and maybe it's beneath us to do that. Now, that line of thinking to me is very short-sighted, but the world does not always work the way you and I might prefer it works. So I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll see. Like you said, I think South Carolina to me is... I have no sense of this because this just happened a couple hours ago, but my guess is they probably go the mid-major route. But I always say you can never underestimate the money and the resources in the SEC if a team really wants to go out and get someone big, right?
Okay, let's hit the pause button here for a second, and let's look at the last couple of vacancies they've had. And this is from memory, so if I get some of it wrong, let me know. Frank Martin has been at Carolina, 10 years now? Which is crazy. It doesn't seem like it's been that long.
Good while, yeah.
And the reason Carolina got Frank Martin was sideways with his athletic director and wanted out. And that was, I guess, the best landing spot at the time. The time before that, was it Darren Horn? I believe it was.
Yeah, he took over for Darren Horn.
And Darren Horn, we were speaking of mid-majors, Darren Horn came from Western Kentucky, which is approximately on the level of Murray State, or was at the time. Good mid-major school with pretty good tradition. He'd been successful, went to Carolina, didn't work out. I think they might have even won the East one year when the East was way down. I want to say they won the East or tied for it and maybe didn't even make the tournament. This is back when the SEC was doing divisions. My memory on that might be faulty, but my point is, and AD's change and all that, and maybe none of it's relevant, but I'm just bringing up Carolina's history in terms of where it's gone the last 2 times this has happened and how it happened.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, I think this one's pretty. To me, this one's pretty wide open because I think it's, because here's the reason why it's pretty wide open because I think it's gonna, to an extent, it's gonna be how the dominoes perhaps fall elsewhere with the jobs that maybe are perceived again as better jobs in the SEC, right? So I think that's something that you got to think about too in that kind of scenario. So
Well, and I'm just sitting here thinking it's so fresh and it's such an odd situation in a way that I think there's a decent chance whoever the next coach is we haven't even named.
right, and that's always a possibility. I mean, I think we because we try to do these immediately after. There's always going to be someone that we're going to look back and say, "Oh yeah, well that makes sense." I try to narrow down my top 3. Like I'm trying to think of who it would even narrow it down to right now. I don't think it's going to be Sean Miller or Archie Miller. Could be wrong. Look, if those guys want to get back into coaching, obviously if you're South Carolina, why not, right? Why not make an offer? But I think Matt McMahon's one to me that's interesting because I just feel like that and look, I mean Missouri, would be good. I think South Carolina's probably a better choice for Matt McMahon than Mississippi State.
Well, it's closer to where he's from. He's from Oak Ridge, Tennessee.
Right. So
maybe that matters.
I think that's an interesting one. I would keep an eye on that one because I think that could be interesting. Again, if Mike Boynton is not just the clear-cut target, and if he doesn't want out of Stillwater, right? Like if he's fine with where he's at and has no intention to move, then I think it's just it's pretty wide open after that. So.
Okay, March is here. The madness has officially begun. It's time for you to shoot your shot, score big on the nonstop action with MyBookie. Predict winners in each round of the MyBookie bracket contest for a chance to win a Bitcoin. That's one entire Bitcoin, which is worth a lot of money these days. A Doodle NFT, currently valued at over $50,000 and over $100,000 in additional cash prizes. Whether you're filling out multiple brackets, betting the national championship winner, or simply looking for player and game props, MyBookie has you covered. Sign up today with MyBookie. Use the promo code Southeastern. That's the promo code Southeastern to make your first deposit, earning a free entry into the My Bracket contest. Selections for the bracket officially begin on March 13th and close March the 17th at 12 p.m. So make sure you get your deposit in now with Southeastern to secure that free entry. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if MyBookie has any odds on the next coach of South Carolina. So, wonder what's next for Frank Martin. That's interesting to think about.
That's what I was going to ask you next, because guess where his name has popped up in speculation this week? Let me give you one hint. It's not a hard guess.
The AD, you could do a lot worse, right?
The AD that he didn't like, was that John Curry?
I want to say that's right, but I could be wrong, and I don't want to throw John Curry under the bus here. But
it was not a secret that he was not really happy with.
Yeah, I mean
the
that's
AD,
why,
and that's why he left.
That kind of that's one that caught people off guard is when he took the job.
And it worked for him there. He got his JUCO kids, which that's a good area of the country to recruit JUCO kids from, is it not?
Yeah. By the way, it was Curry. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was an issue.
It worked once. There are worse ideas than bringing Frank Martin back to Manhattan. Which, again, it is not, just by virtue of conference affiliation, not the job probably that it was 10 years ago. Just if for no other reason, no slight to Kansas State, than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's by no means is an easy job. So, that's interesting though to think about, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it worked. What was his record there?
Yeah, I mean they were. Who
They
was
went to
that
the
group he
tournament a
had? I
lot.
mean, he had Beasley. He had
Yep.
who were all those guys he had? He had a good group there. So, um,
A lot more passion for basketball there too than the stop he just left. Again, no disrespect to South Carolina, but that fan base had its little burst with the Final Four, and it just seemed like within 2 years that it dissipated.
I think Kansas State's gonna have the same names we've talked about in other ones. Like Grant McCasland will be one. I think Jerome Tang's gonna be in all of these. Like, yeah, just
Right.
insert his name in every one because he's been with Scott Drew so long. They've had all the success, and I think I'm not sure how old he is, but he's still one that's out there. So yeah, I mean, what else is still open? Maryland's open, Louisville's open. Trying to find the list here.
Well, and one other landing spot for Frank Martin might have been Miami, but that's now closed because Larinaga
Right.
signed an extension. So that's the one that we had watched for a couple of years and said that's the place he might go back, but not now.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of these other jobs. To me, there's not really one that, like, I don't see him going to Tulsa or George Washington or, um, any places like that. So, I mean,
You could have a worse landing spot than Tulsa, though. That place
well,
is
sure,
one.
but I just don't see it, I guess is the best way
Right.
to put it. I could, how old's Frank Martin?
Mid-50s?
I have no idea. Like, we have to Google so much of this. It all just runs together. 55, yeah. So, I mean, Frank could take a year off and do TV like AK did.
Which he'd be great at.
Yeah. So he's in, and I think he's made a little money over his career. So he could sit back, and I don't think Frank Martin is in a rush to go anywhere. You know what I mean? I think he can sit back and be very selective about what he does next. So
I just got a text from somebody in the media business said, "Did you see South Carolina's looking at Miller?"
I mean, again, I'm not shocked if there is interest from South Carolina and Sean Miller because you could certainly do much worse. But I don't know. We'll see, right? I keep saying this, but I have with Mike White going to Georgia, it's pretty clear that grasp on this SEC coaching carousel is not something that's easily had right now. So yeah, we'll see what happens with this coaching search with all the other 43. Go from there.
Chris Lee, Blake Lovell, thanks for watching. See you again.